Hi, I'm Rob and this is Gems of War. In this video I'm going to go over the Soulforge and give you my opinion on what I think is good and bad in there. What's worth crafting and what's worth running away from as if you were being chased by a giant pus-infested cabbage. What? No idea where that came from. Anyway, onwards and upwards. First of all, I'd always recommend popping into the shop every Monday morning and making sure you grab the weekly event troop. This is a Twinkleberry. Have a look at what it does. Converts purple to green and deals damage to an enemy, boosted by gems converted at a 1-to-1 ratio. So that's quite handy actually. Quite like that. It is a Fey dragon. Looks like a little baby Glitterclaw there of some type. The traits: immune to burning and fairy fire, and gains 1 magic when an ally casts a spell. And immunity to mana burn, mana drain and mana steal is pretty useful, but I like that spell. Converting the purple to green is pretty nifty and doing damage at the same time, so I always recommend grabbing them to mythic level if you have the required glory. And the reason is it helps your kingdom power basically. Grab enough of them to get to mythic and upgrade this to level 20, and that's going to in the long run really help the power levels on your kingdoms. Whilst you're here, if you've got some spare glory still, you can pop over to Spoils of War and make sure you grab 10 of them as well. Main reason is 10 event keys, but also a little bit of gold and some extra souls to get a limit of 10 of them per week. Can't do any more than that. Now onto the Soulforge. We'll look at the weapons first. I'm not going to go over the weapons that are here all the time, only the ones that are new this week. First of all then, Celestial Flask. Love this weapon. Creates 3 potions of either blue, green, red, yellow or purple and gains an extra turn. A potion, when it appears and is matched with a normal mana colour, basically gives a big boost in gems across the board of that mana colour that you matched, and you can match more than one potion of the same colour together as well for double the effect, which is really handy. Only useful if you're using the colours which this generates. If you're using a predominantly brown team, this is not going to do you any good whatsoever. But the best thing about it is it gains an extra turn. So even if those potions appear at first and don't automatically align, which sometimes they will, you've got an extra turn to actually then make the most of them, or have another ally on the team which say explodes gems, and if you explode a potion you still get the benefit. So this is an absolutely brilliant weapon. I really love it. Trickster's Shot, another fantastic weapon. Eliminates all armor from an enemy and deals a certain amount of damage, then gains 2 magic boosted by armor eliminated. It's kind of like a cheap man's rope dart in the same effect, eliminating all armor and dealing damage. Obviously it doesn't have the entangle and pull to first position like rope dart does, but it's still an absolutely fantastic weapon and certainly worth picking up. The ones here, these are all standard ones which are here all the time. They are in previous Soulforge videos. Doomed Poignard. This is interesting because, to my knowledge, a poignard is a short sword with a continuously tapering blade, which is basically a thin, straight, continuous taper. This is nothing of the sort. Hence, maybe it's why it's a doomed poignard, because it is completely wrong. Anyway, that's enough of the silly French history. Deal 36 in my case, damage to the last enemy boosted by green gems. If they have a doom, deal double damage, and there's a 3% chance per tempering level to kill the enemy. So the boost by green gems is a 1-to-1 ratio. So for example, if there was 10 green gems on the board, I'm going to get 46 damage, and if they have a double doom, if they have a doom, deal a double damage. It's a lot of D's going on there. Then yeah, so just above 90. Can be good. That 3% chance per tempering level to kill can be relevant, but a little bit chancy at the same time. Not the best doomed weapon ever. And a thing of note, if you're going to do the Tower of Doom, then it is one of the weapons that is in one of the later tiers, and it's not that hard to achieve. It's much better to pick it up that way, because you're probably going to be doing some of those Doom tiers anyway, and you effectively get this weapon for free rather than have to spend all these resources to get it from here. All these Curse Breaker weapons I'm going to go over pretty soon. I've only got them because I've got the Soulforge to level 20. Now, Staff of Bright Forest, remove all green gems with no effect. and deal damage to an enemy boosted by those gems removed. If the enemy is from Bright Forest, deal double damage. So only really effective if against a Bright Forest team where you're going to get that double damage, and only really if you need to counter them against green, because removing green, if you have a team that uses green, is going to do you no good whatsoever, but it will make it hard work for the enemy that uses green if they're green and from Bright Forest. So very, very situational, and yeah, more completist than anything. Wouldn't go grabbing that for any other reason, just to add it to that pile of weapons that you're not going to use anymore, ever. Well, maybe once, just to see what it does and think that was crap, and then go on to the next one. Anyway, Fairy Ring. Deal damage to an enemy boosted by Fey allies. Then create a mix of 6 green and purple gems for each Fey ally. So another one of these weapons where it needs to be set up in a particular way to get the most out of it. We need a Fey team to get the most out of it, and because it creates a mix of green and purple, you obviously need green and purple Fey allies in your team that use green and purple mana to make the most out of it. So this doesn't use it, this uses yellow and blue, so we need 3 other allies. At least 2 of them are going to need to use green or purple to make this a relevant weapon. But it still can be handy in certain situations. Summer Aegis. Deals damage to an enemy boosted by Bright Forest allies, so a very similar weapon to the previous one. Then creates a mix of 6 green and red this time for each Bright Forest ally. So similar to the last one, but based around Bright Forest basically. And that is it for that. Now on to the troops. We'll start at the bottom and work our way up, which is always a good thing to do. Ishtara. I'm not going to go over again these ones that are here all the time. They're in previous Soulforge videos, or just concentrate on the 4 new mythics that are here this week. Ishtara, kind of interesting. Deals a decent amount of damage to all enemies, then creates 9 yellow gems boosted by blessed allies. That blessed can be increased, because if you get the 3rd trait, then a 50% chance to bless a random ally when my turn begins means you're going to have to wait maybe a few rounds to increase that chance of creating more yellow, which is going to increase the chance of basically getting a 4 match and an extra turn, or at least making several 3 matches on yellow. What I've noticed with this kind of troop sometimes is it can set up the opposition sometimes, so be wary of that if you're against a team that uses yellow at the same time. It's kind of risk versus reward with this kind of thing, but it can be good when it works, and when it works, it can work really, really well. Umanath. Now, when you look at this, deals damage to an enemy boosted by all their skills, and if the enemy dies, gain 10 attack and create 12 skulls. So this kind of sounds like a poor man's Zul'Goth in a way, because Zul'Goth just kills someone outright, as we know, and then creates 12 skulls. But the reason why this is nowhere near as good as Zul'Goth, for me anyway, is the fact that, okay, it's boosted by all their skills, but you do have to make sure it kills them first to create those 12 skulls. And that often means you're going to have to target this on someone who you didn't particularly want to target. With Zul'Goth, you can literally just say, oh, kill you, matey boy. You're the most dangerous enemy here. Hasta la vista. And they're gone. If you're not going to kill them, even though it's the most dangerous enemy, it's not really worth casting. Well, maybe it is in certain situations, but the point is, it's not as good as you think it is when it sounds pretty similar to what Zul'Goth does. Another benefit of Zul'Goth is his traits with the freeze and burn. Part of his spell as well is really important. This doesn't do anything like that. It does do Hunter's Mark on enemies when doing skull damage, which is pretty effective. And a 20% chance to dodge skull damage is okay, but gain 4 attack when matching 4 or more gems is only semi-useful. So this can work. It can work really well sometimes, but it does require the game to go a certain way to, make the most of it. The Possessed King deals damage to all enemies boosted by both daemon allies and enemies, and there's 3 separate 20% chances to transform a random enemy into a daemon. But I don't actually like that spell one bit. The damage to all enemies is just moderate, but then that separate 3 chances to transform a random enemy into a daemon can often go against you. The amount of times I've cast that spell, and got to be honest, it isn't actually that much because I don't use him an awful lot. I do use it sometimes for that third trait, but certainly you wouldn't be getting this troop for his spell, because the amount of times that spell goes against you and he transforms the enemy into a more powerful enemy than what was there in the first place is unbelievable, and that can seriously go against you. So the main reason to get the Possessed King is that third trait. Now, explode 2 random gems on 4 or 5 gem matches is pretty handy. It can generate quite a lot of mana, but only if you don't mind a sort of, literally, as the trait suggests, an unstable game where you can't really plan anything, because with those explosions going on all the time, yes, it generates mana, but B, you do lose certain elements of board control which you may have liked without it. And I don't rate this guy quite as highly as a lot of other people do anyway. You can get an explode 1 yellow gem on a 4 match, for example, Lightning Strike is called, in champion talents of various classes. So that's half the effect of that just in a champion talent trait, let alone the third trait of a mythic who is really only there for that reason. So he's okay, but I don't think he's anything that fantastic anymore. But other people's opinion will differ. This is just my opinion, remember, based on my play style. Scorpius. Really like Scorpius. I'm still waiting to get this one, and I'm looking forward to getting him because I've got a few teams in mind that are going to use him. Deals damage to the last 2 enemies, and then the damage is lethal on any poisoned enemy. So use a troop which gets the entire team poisoned first, and then cast this guy, and those 2 enemies are toast. End of the day. Finished. Kaput. See you later, mate. Gone. Love it. Can't wait to get him. Really looking forward to that. Any others? No, that is it for the mythics. Darksmith Drenza is only there because I have the Soulforge to level 20 as well. So let's take a look at the legendaries. Don't really recommend crafting legendaries. You're much better off saving your hard-earned diamonds for those mythics, which are way harder to get in chests than legendaries are. Now, Bunny Nog. Don't know what rabbits seem to have against, or rabid rabbits anyway, seem to have against knights, but these ones certainly do. Deal damage to an enemy, and if the enemy is a knight, deal double damage, and there's a 50% chance to devour knights. So these things absolutely really do not like knights one bit. Only really relevant against knight teams, but apart from that, there's no reason to get a Bunny Nog really. Borealis. Fairly decent in first place, this one. Freezes all enemies and deals damage to the weakest enemy. Not a big fan of the spells that basically have a forced target, basically. This deals 56 damage to the weakest enemy. Sometimes it makes you basically wait before casting this when you don't really want to. For example, if an enemy, the weakest enemy was on, say, 50, 55 life, sure, cast away. This will take them out and freeze the other enemies. But if the weakest enemy is on, say, 4 or 5 life, then that's a bit of a waste of a spell. You're just doing that really for the freeze, and it kind of forces you to wait to cast it while you take out that other enemy first. So the freeze is pretty decent, but the actual damage to the weakest enemy side of this is not great at all. But this thing is good in first place. Reduces damage from skulls by 65% is pretty massive, and deal triple skull damage versus frozen enemies. Can synergize really well with his spell if you manage to create a team with this that creates a bunch of skulls at the same time. You're relatively safe from any skull bashage in return, and that triple skull damage versus frozen enemies can work really well if you manage to cast Borealis first and freeze all the enemies first. Soulzara. If you still need souls in the game, then this is a good way to go, and a relatively cheap way of doing it. Gain 50% bonus souls from battle is the first trait, and then deal damage to an enemy, then gain 10 souls, and if the enemy's life is greater, deal triple damage and gain triple souls. So really good if you need souls, that one. And Frost Feather deals damage to all enemies, and if there's an ice storm, curse all enemies. Curse is a really handy spell, or trait even, and basically Frost Feather's okay, but again, would not recommend crafting anybody here. Just save your diamonds for those much harder to get mythics. Now for my mythic pick of the week, who's it going to be? We got to pick between Ishtara, Umaneth, Possessed King and Scorpius. And to be honest, they're all pretty decent. There's not a bad one among them. We'll start at the bottom. Ishara. I don't think I can give it to Ashara because basically it's good damage to all, but that create yellow gems even when you've got some boosted blessed allies can still effectively miss and set up the opposition. So any troop which can basically help the opposition sometimes if a spell goes wrong is not going to be my pick of the week. Umaneth is okay. Don't rate it quite as highly as Ishara, but you are basically forced to use that troop in a certain way as well. And again, you kind of want the first troop entangled in a way if you cast this, because if those skulls go wrong and miss a line and you set up the opposition, you can be on the end of that retaliation from skulls in a serious way, which you don't want either. Possessed King, am I going to give it to him? I don't know. That third trait is pretty decent, but it's hard to justify a mythic sometimes just for the traits, and it's the third one which is the best. But what I will say about the Possessed King is some teams you've got your main three troops. You've got the position 1, position 2 and position 3, and sometimes that's the team set up and that's how they work. So the fourth slot is basically free. If you've got a team like that, then the Possessed King is an absolutely go-to troop. You can pop him in there, you'll get a lot of extra mana generation from those random or whatever happens on those 4 or 5 gem matches, and it can really make a difference. So he is good, really good in that way. But I am going to absolutely give my mythic pick of the week to Scorpius. Just get the enemies poisoned and then get this guy charged and 2 will be dead. Plain and simple as that. Really, really powerful. Looking forward to getting him. Scorpius is my mythic craft of the week. If you have the diamonds, I'm now about to go and spend my, I don't know what I got on the vault keys on this long treasure vault. It was something like about 500 or 600 I think, but I'm going to cane through those, see if I can get enough diamonds to get Scorpius crafted, because I do want this guy. Right, there's the Soulforge video. If you found it useful or helpful, be cool if you considered hitting that like and subscribe button if you've not done so already. But most of all, thanks for watching. Catch you again next time. Bye for now.